All right, welcome to another episode. We've named it "Goddamn Liberals." So I don't know if you're with that pronunciation. That is here's their the Texas version of "Goddamn Liberals."
Yeah, just the goddamn liberals, but.
So it's trying to do a weekly, bi-weekly episode from these crazy socialist, radical liberals, and from our perspective, because we're so radical in our thinking here.
Mm-hmm.
But being in Georgia and the implications of the Senate runoff race at Georgia are pretty big, I think. Because it's going to determine control of the Senate for the next couple of years.
Yeah, is the government going to be in deadlock for 2 years while COVID finally starts to end, or are we actually going to get relief to people?
Yeah. And what I thought we'd do this episode was dig deeper into the four candidates. Kelly Loeffler is running against Raphael Warnock, and then John Ossoff is running against David Perdue. So you did a really good job going in and finding some points there with the different races. So I guess I'll let you kick it off there. What you found about Miss Loeffler and Mr. Warnock there?
Oh yeah, it's interesting the parallels between Loeffler and I guess there's parallels between Loeffler and Perdue, but like in terms of comparison of Loeffler to Warnock is Loeffler is very much part of big business. She likes to call herself an outsider, but really she's very much an insider in terms of big business and the radical right. She's part of, she was, I believe, she was employed by the Intercontinental Exchange. I don't remember her exact position, but she actually helped them establish effectively a tax haven in the Cayman Islands. She's very much someone who does not believe that businesses should pay their fair share in society, that it's okay for them to profit and not give anything back to the country.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that. You got all this money sitting in a bank and all this control. A little bit more local information about Intercontinental Exchange. They have a office building in Metro Atlanta, roughly at 285 75 on the northwest side of town. That I believe that Loeffler took over the former office space here in the same area in Metro Atlanta from John Isaacson, who stepped down, and then of course Kemp appointed Loeffler for the Senate position. And then her home is a little bit south of here, down in Buckhead. There's actually been some weird back and forth stuff of, no, it's not her house, or people are getting pictures of Tyler Perry's house, but it's pretty clear that she's in, there's one article out there that says she's most likely the richest U.S. senator right now.
Oh, yeah, that's completely not surprising. And she's definitely enriched herself even further with COVID. She traded a lot just before the COVID crash with her former employers in Intercontinental Exchange. So it's like she was very clearly aware that things are going to happen while she was saying something completely different to the public.
So let's picture ourselves as someone in middle or South Georgia. In Georgia, you have pretty much Atlanta, a little bit of Savannah. You got these other metropolitan cities around, but pretty much for the most part, I mean, half of the state's population lives in Metro Atlanta. The other half of the population is spread out. If I'm not mistaken, Georgia is the largest state east of the Mississippi. It's a pretty big state, 159 counties we have here.
Wow.
Yeah, and growing up in the state, growing up in South Georgia, it's ironic that I told myself growing up that I never wanted to move to Atlanta. That I thought it was too hustle bustle, city folk up there and everything. I can't imagine moving back to South Africa at this point. And perspectives. We went down to Florida for Thanksgiving holidays and saw a lot of Trump signs, flags out. And even though he had, clearly lost the race, but what I'm trying to get at here is trying to picture yourself as someone in rural Georgia. Most likely, the people that you hang out with, your family that's near you, probably have a lot of Republican-leaning or conservative-leaning folks. How in the world does someone in that kind of bubble think that voting for these super rich people is in their best interest? It still boggles my mind. And we can go into other, things like racism or whatever, between the parties. But have you, that could think out in Texas, you have some situations out there where you've got the big cities like Houston and Dallas, and then some other, medium-sized cities. But then you have the rest of Texas that is huge. So is any thoughts of why these folks seem drawn to these candidates that are not in their league at all?
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a good point. It is really confusing because it's not like Kelly Loeffler cares at all about average people. She's made it. She flies by private jet everywhere. She's against the whole slew of ACA. She's against abortion. I mean, obviously only against abortion for the average person. If she were in that position, I assume she wouldn't think twice about it. But it's you're right. It's really hard to think about because is it that people want to think of themselves as temporarily frustrated millionaires? So one day they could be like Kelly Loeffler, but for most people that's not really going to happen.
No, she flies in a private jet that she has to go further than, I guess, an hour radius from where she needs to go to and from. That's just not feasible. I mean, there are rich people in rural Georgia. They're usually landowners. They may have a farming background, which, interestingly, Loeffler claims that she had a farming background. And also 6 days ago, there was let's see if it was she claims that she knows how it feels to wait on a paycheck.
What?
As one of her talking points. She keeps drawing up, and I made the reference. She looks like an inmate clamp at Fembut, and she tries to dress up and look like a farm lady to try to appeal to these rural Georgia voters.
So she says she knows what it means to wait for a paycheck, but she thinks that Georgians who have pre-existing conditions that their health care shouldn't be covered. That totally makes sense.
Well, heaven forbid, because she's got plenty of money in the bank to pay for her health care, so why should she worry about anybody else?
Yeah.
We'll see. So, the stuff that you're so running against Warnock. Everything that I know about Reverend Warnock is he is the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, of course, where Dr. Martin Luther King did a lot of his work when he was still with us years ago. So it is an interesting. Of course, he is a black guy running against this rich white lady who we've just talked about for a number of minutes there. So it is a very striking thing. So, Reverend Warnock has got these ads that he is, from Georgia. His mother, when he was growing up, was actually picking cotton in the fields down in Waycross, Georgia, which is in rural South Georgia. Another story that's out there that he spent some time in Savannah over on the coast, and, he has felt the pressure of being looked at for law enforcement of, he didn't commit a crime, but he's got this, people looking around him just because he looks different from other people who's around him. He must have done some sort of, crime or something. So a lot of his position comes from, criminal justice reform, rehabilitating in private prisons, and so forth. So he really, bringing yourself up, getting a doctor, being in, the Baptist Church. So what have you found about Mr. Warnock? A very, very different, striking story between the two candidates.
Oh yeah, I didn't know about his personal history like that, but it really colors the. You're right. It really colors the different positions he has. So like, he understands that like farming is important for Georgia, and it's not like he can just mandate like, oh, you have to have more like climate change friendly practices. He's actually interested in creating economic incentives for farmers to help fight climate change. It's not just, you can't just say, hey, everyone do this now. It's much more effective to say like, hey, like sure you can do what you were doing, but if you do these things, which also happen to be better for the environment, you can get additional farming subsidies. That makes a lot more sense. It shows that it makes sense why he understands how farmers think and what's important to them. And then we talked about.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and then I was going to move on to the criminal justice stuff. But do you have something else on the farming?
No, that's a key. And the only thing about farming that I've come across is I spent some time with a gentleman, Fred Swan. He ran for Georgia State Agriculture Commission a couple of years ago, and he was saying, and this goes back to the perspective of those rural Georgia voters. He says the landowners and sometimes the farmers that also farm on that land have these vast acreage plots. They are probably voting Republican. That all the people that they hang around, all of the connections that they have to elected offices, it's very difficult to find someone because they're probably looking at it from a money standpoint, from taxes and being able to write off stuff. So it's going to be very likely to be able to turn one of those type of voters. His recommendation says go out and find the people that work on the land. Because in a lot of cases, the landowner, they will not necessarily farm the land. They just sit back, pay the taxes, and they end up leasing out the land for folks to farm on. He says go out and find, folks that are able to vote that actually work on the land and talk about these talking points. So when you're able to try to encourage them. So it's interesting to see how that goes. I remember our drive down to Florida, there's a lot of cotton right now in fields.
Yep.
When you drive down some of these roads, it's pulled out of the fields and they've got it ready, but as the trucks are taking those huge bales of cotton the road, and the cotton flies off of the bale and lands on the side of the road. So it's not snow. It's because it's South Georgia, but it's a lot of cotton, that's down there.
That's an image. Yeah, I've not seen that before because I've not spent enough time in South Georgia.
Yeah, but it also this struck me. There's I call her McQueen. So we were pretty good friends in high school. But she apparently is an ultrasound tech for a OB/GYN practice in Southwest Georgia. She posted on December 3rd with a link to an article from Newsweek because there is a wedge point that comes up in almost every election between conservatives and liberals about pro-choice and the abortion. And I'll quote from her post on Facebook December 3rd. Yeah. This is a lady. She's a little bit younger than me, as I recall, maybe a year or two, but she is a medical professional, down in West Georgia. I'm voting pro-life, and I would love for you to join me! ! I don't understand how a pastor can be pro-choice. And I let it be. It has 18 likes, 12 comments, and it leads to an article from news.com talking about Doug Collins, of all people. I don't want to spend all the time talking about Doug Collins, but he's out there, rummaging through people trying to say that Warnock, you can't be a pastor and also be pro-choice. So we've got that going on as this microcosm between and I'd say even pro-choice or pro-life, that's not necessarily a city thing, it's a rural thing, but in all of my involvement in political work there, you have the term a single-issue voter.
Yeah.
That's something like abortion. They just draw a line in the sand. They're not going to cross over that line. And if the candidate has, chosen to be on one side of the line or the other, that's where their vote goes.
Yeah, those are really hard situations to work with, because you've essentially convinced someone that, okay, like I can hurt you with all of these other policies and take advantage of you politically in these different ways, but as long as I pay lip service to this one issue, then I can do whatever I want. That's always very frustrating to work with and to even just speak with someone about.
I also found there in your notes you're talking about private prisons, and just did a quick search here. If you go to the official Georgia State Department of Corrections website, there's actually a completely separate page just on private prisons here in Georgia. And so the state of Georgia has contracts with 2 private prison companies, First Civic, Geo Corporation. And these facilities are contracted to house 2,974 offenders in 4 private facilities here in Georgia.
Yeah, and
in addition to that, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and they can because they're with a lot of these prisons, their contract with the state requires that they have a certain number of prisoners housed at any time. So the state incentivizes its judges to send people to prison that shouldn't necessarily have to. And the private prisons, of course, because they get paid by how many people they're housing, they have an incentive to not grant parole to prisoners who are being perfectly reasonable and who have actually shown that they can be released back into society. It's just an awful situation. I can't.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that you are a staffer in one of these private prisons. You're a cell guard or whatever. So the situation is you're being paid. I guess you get some benefits from the company, but you have counterparts in other parts of the state and other facilities where it's a different facility.
Yeah.
It's just a very interesting, I mean, you can look at it from both sides, I guess, but it's just a very interesting difference in looking at. So when you go and work in this private prison setting, are you getting, information from your coworkers, from your management, roles there that lead to, keep these prisoners around because it's your next paycheck?
Yep. Well, in general, it's been shown that they treat, in general, private prisons treat prisoners worse because, of course, they want to handle them more cheaply. They don't see them as quite as humans. You end up with the opposite impact that you want prisons to have. You end up with higher recidivism rates. You end up with higher rates of violence in these places. And since they're private, it's a lot easier for them to cover up when things happen compared to state prisons. They have a lot more.
And I just said that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, because the state prisons, of course, have a lot more oversight.
Yeah, and I was going to say also there is the Stewart prison that is in rural South Georgia, Stewart Detention Center, that had a number of immigration folks locked up there. And I need to go and try to find the article, but there was a story that was pretty obscene, honestly, that these ladies were getting hysterectomies against their will in this facility down in South Georgia.
I didn't realize that was a place where that was happening. That's just absolutely infuriating. It's literally what we did to Native Americans. What was that in the 60s? And I can't believe that that's happening in this millennium.
Yeah, I mean it's archaic, but there is a very detailed. See how many pages it says. 182-page document that the ACLU of Georgia has with, and they are covering the 4 immigration detention centers and facilities in Georgia, including that one that's we've had a number of stories come out of the Stewart County Detention Center down in Lumpkin, Georgia. Mm-hmm. So it's going back to Warnock and to come back to where we started this conversation, it looks like he has an interest to stop the private prisons.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that's very dear to his heart. Just like growing up black in Georgia, I can't the overwhelming rate at which we send black people to prison compared to white people. Like everyone knows or has like a close friend or a family member who's like been in prison just because of how asymmetric that is compared to the traditional white people experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, when looking at Loeffler versus Warnock, and trying to, because, being from South Georgia and living and growing up down there and seeing the perspectives and hearing about the perspectives, mm-hmm. Just wanted to bring that into the conversation to see if there was any. Sometimes it's difficult for these kind of folks to even listen to any other viewpoint, because, and I don't want to go too extreme and try to call them out bad people or whatever, but if you wake up and your family that's around you, everybody is a Republican. You go to work in the morning and everybody there is talking Republican. Maybe they're even wearing paraphernalia from a particular conservative candidate. How is a person going to feel like they fit in if they come out and hear us talking or a political ad or anything, and they end up coming out because of violence sometimes, literally. These folks, they're honestly scared to vote any different than what the people around them are doing.
Yeah, I really don't know what to do. It just makes me sad and angry, and I wish I had the words of what to say to people in those positions.
Yeah. Well, you digress, and here we go. We've got already absentee ballots. I actually dropped my absentee ballot off yesterday. Those are already in the mail. And we've got our early voting starting. Does California or Texas do early voting?
We do. When I moved from California to Texas in the past few months, so then I switched over my registration from California to Texas, and fortunately was able to vote early in Texas.
Yeah, we have the same here, and that's starting soon, leading up to this runoff in January. So last evening, Trump flew to town, and then a day or two ago, Pence was in town. Mm-hmm. So they're bringing out their big guns, and including people like Doug Collins, who is an interesting guy to try to shoot for. But if I'm not mistaken, I heard last evening that Trump went on for about an hour and a half on the stage at the Valdosta Airport in South Georgia. But he didn't let Perdue also talk for about 2 minutes total.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is it? Which is the one that's refusing refusing the debate? Is that?
Oh yeah, we can talk about chicken Perdue. So there is a hashtag on social media, #ChickenPerdue. Because it goes back beyond just the re-election effort. Perdue has never held I'll call it a true town hall. To give him just a little bit of credit, he has advertised, in air quotes, so-called town halls, but they only went out to his Republican supporters. So, of course, he's not going to, get any questions to that type of forum from anyone that is on the opposing side for the most part. Or if those questions come in, they're probably being screened and thrown in the trash, or he doesn't have to answer to those.
Yeah.
So that's his history, and he's actually gone on the record, if I'm not mistaken, and said that town halls are just not his style.
So in other words, he doesn't care about what average people think or what issues are important to them.
No, and it's been very clear that there's also footage out there. It amazes me. I've said this numerous times. I reposted on my social media. There is footage out there. So, and this was at Georgia Tech. I believe he went to Georgia Tech in Metro Atlanta as his alma mater. And he was there doing some sort of, they were opening a new building. I don't remember exactly the guise of why Perdue was there, but as I understand, he is an alumni. And one of the students walked up to him with a phone in his hand and wanted to ask him questions. And when Perdue figured out what was going on, he says, "No, I'm not going to do that." And he snatched the phone out of the student's hand. And it amazes me with some sort of the powerful video footage like that the campaign or hack has not used that against Perdue. And there's also more footage from some ladies back when the Kavanaugh confirmation was going on. Perdue, if I'm not mistaken, Perdue actually was in television TV ads trying to convince everyone that Kavanaugh was a good justice to put on the Supreme Court. And, of course, going back to our talk about abortion, that's a big concern for those involved in abortion politics there, that Roe v. Wade may be overturned. So that these the ladies that confronted Perdue at the Reagan Airport in D.C., they were on the that was the guys that they were to talk about the Kavanaugh confirmation and how it may affect abortion rights. So the lady is, with the phones in their hands, so they're getting live video footage of this, and Perdue stops at the lady pointing at her and he says, "Don't touch me." And they continue walking down the hallway. There's a lady with Perdue. I don't know what Purdue's wife looks like, because she doesn't seem to be very involved in anything. But there's a blonde-haired lady next to Perdue. He mentioned something while I go head-to-head, and he works off into the airport bathroom to avoid, because they all had to all be ladies that were they're trying to track him down. And then where the video cuts. But these are very powerful stories and images and video that it amazes me to no end that either someone with Ossoff's campaign or a PAC has not picked up, footage to them to look at.
Yeah, because it's just showing that just like Perdue could not, like, he sees himself as above like everyone else. Like he's not beholden to the same rules that everyone else is. And just feels
and
like
he actually did some research into Perdue's background. He tries to call himself an outsider, which is kind of similar to how Loeffler tries to portray herself as an outsider. Yeah. And there's actually a political ad for Perdue going around. He actually admits in the TV ad that he never wanted to run for Congress. And my response was, well, get out. And, there's clearly some other desire here for both of these candidates to really want to be in, because they have plenty of money. They don't have to be in these positions of power.
Yeah, but they realize they can use these positions of powers to enrich themselves and their friends and make it so that, like, no one else has the same opportunities they do.
Mm-hmm. And specifically, Perdue has gone even further. There have been news stories out there that he has used his positions of power on these certain committees to actually steer government contracts towards companies. And then ultimately, behind the scenes, he was calling his broker to buy stock in these companies that he knew eventually was going to get a windfall, and of course, increase his income that way.
Oh, yeah, he's been the most prolific stock trader of just anyone in the Senate. Like, literally, like, if you take all of the trades that every senator has done, he has done 1/3 of all trades, either since he became office or, like, this entire year. Like, it's, like, these are individual trades where he's profited, usually from the cases you're talking about, where he's on a committee, he has some say in where the money goes, and he can direct the funds towards the companies where it will result in more money for himself. Like it's just revolting.
Yeah, I want to repeat that. The most prolific stock trader, 1/3 of all trades in the Senate were by just Perdue himself.
Yep.
I mean, that feels like he spends a lot of time on his stock portfolio. When calls aren't his style.
Yeah, he's apparently got managers, so there's some sort of plausible deniability, like, oh, he doesn't tell them what to invest in, but just the like the ease at which he could very easily take advantage of the situation. Like, we shouldn't be questioning whether or not senators can have to decide between enriching themselves and doing what's best for the country. Like, there's no we should never be in a situation like that, and he's either towing the line or has gone way over the line, and it really would not be surprising if he's gone over it.
Yeah. Well, and so both Perdue and Loeffler, I recall seeing political ads because they've taken a lot of heat over this. And it's made national news, I would say international news. And so, okay, so it's interesting sometimes to see a BBC News perspective on American politics. And those are interesting to read sometimes. But that they've come out in these political ads on the defense saying that they've had numerous ethics committees look into the allegations. They have made these stock trades and found no issues. And my response to that is, well, just because they found no issues, that doesn't make it right.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that they say they'd find no issues, and then each time that happens, he sort of takes several steps back. So it's like, oh, okay, then I'm not going to make the trades myself. Oh, okay, now I'm not each time that something like that happens, he has some response to sort of mitigate how it looks. But if they didn't find anything, there wouldn't be any reason for him to be doing this.
Yeah.
So it's
also the story that you heard from Pilotech. He tries to also start off as being a corporate CEO, and he's danced around to a couple of companies. Reebok, Pilotech, and Dollar General are the three that come to mind. Yep. Honestly, I would, if I were Reebok, I would send David Perdue a cease and desist letter and say, stop talking about us. I mean, if they want to put us in your resume, that's fine, but stop putting us in political ads. It's embarrassing. Some of the stuff that Perdue has done, but he still walks around and says, oh, yeah, I was CEO of Reebok for whatever year he was there. But you did a specific research about Pilotech.
Oh, yeah. So just in general, Perdue is known as someone who you send in to make money for investors. He's not someone who will make the business do better. He's not someone that will make sure the employees are taken care of. He's someone where it's like the investors want to make a quick buck, so you send him in there. He gets a big bonus, then he's out. And that's exactly what happened with Pilotech. Perdue became CEO of Pilotech in June 2002 because they were having financial troubles. He essentially got there and just sort of gave up. It was said that his behavior while he was CEO was just so demoralizing to the staff there that it was just infectious, where it's like, oh, the CEO of the company doesn't even believe in this, so why should I really try? And then he got himself a nice $1.7 million compensation package leaving after just 9 months. And they said he was barely even there while he was CEO. And that departure, coupled with that really nice compensation package, just kind of killed morale. Pilotech closed just a couple months later, and in a single day, this killed over 7,000 jobs. And in North Carolina alone, 4,000 people were out of work in a single day. At the time, this was the most jobs that North Carolina had lost in a single day, and it was all because Perdue just didn't care. He was put in charge of all these people's livelihoods, and he was more interested in getting money for the shareholders.
Yeah, and was able to pocket $1.7 million as all that went down behind him.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, I don't understand it. It goes back to what I was trying to say, that these folks in rural Georgia that traditionally vote Republican and red to talk about these histories with these candidates, you're not voting in your own interest.
Yep.
And it's just because the people around you, or just because you like, something. Even Stacey Abrams has made a comment. She says identity politics will probably be the death of us.
Yeah.
But folks, they just identify with these candidates or these groups of people that are promoting these candidates, but ultimately it's not in their own interest.
Yep. Yeah. Is Perdue really going to vote for financial aid to people to handle coronavirus when he chose just 1.7 million in compensation and money for investors over 7,600 people's jobs? He is not going to make that. He's not going to vote that for you. He couldn't care if you're left in the dirt with that.
Yeah. And Ossoff has even pointed out that he does live in a private beachfront community. And he found that building seawalls to combat the rise of the sea levels around him. He's almost like they built around New Orleans, but on the coast of Georgia.
Oh yeah, so it's funny because Perdue, who denies that climate change is even happening, but he literally lives in a community that is spending many, many thousands of dollars to protect the community from rising sea levels and climate change. That's just how two-faced can you be? It's literally where you live is having to make changes because of the thing you say doesn't exist.
So let's talk about Ossoff for a little bit. I think that's enough on. I've coined the term Putin Perdue, PUT. For Mr. Perdue there. But John Ossoff's history, and I had to dig into his family a little bit more. I believe his family has some political ties, but he gained a lot of notoriety for going for District 6, which is a U.S. Congressional District 6 here it's mostly around North Metro Atlanta. Mm-hmm. I actually live across the street from District 6. Because I'm gerrymandered into District 11. Mm-hmm. But District 6, at the time he was running against Karen Handel, and it was the most expensive congressional race ever.
Wow.
And everything that I've seen from the aftermath of losing that seat, unfortunately, was that he was able to amass a huge group of followers. Mm-hmm. And donors too. If you look at all of his filings, he does get a lot of national money, for his races. But that actually kind of set him up for a stage for this Senate race. And it's interesting to see. So Johnny Isakson, who was the longtime Georgia politician who had Kelly Loeffler's seat, Johnny Isakson, kind of worked his way up. He was in the state legislature. He had several things there, and then he went off to D.C. in that Senate race. Loeffler, Perdue, Ossoff, and Warnock, these are all pretty much their first, stint in politics, was going straight into a Senate race. I think that's very interesting to see, and it's. I don't know that I have a firm opinion of whether it's good or bad. A lot of people, they say, well, they want term limits, and I go back to what Johnny Isakson said, and he said that if you want term limits, vote me out. He actually told Georgians that, but he was so popular here in Georgia that he pretty much could go up against anybody and still win. Mm-hmm. So he had that name recognition.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to see that all four of these candidates, they're, Loeffler and Perdue, their first, political office was straight to a senator, which is a statewide elected position.
Yeah.
So, we'll see what happens there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I didn't know if you had any other talking points for Ossoff, or he did have a pretty powerful debate performance, where Perdue actually, at some point, wouldn't even look at Ossoff, and decided after that debate that he didn't even want to debate him again.
Oh yeah, because there's no way there's no way Perdue can hold a candle to Ossoff. Like if they appear on stage together, like Ossoff wins every time. There's no, like, he knows he can't compete. But I think that, like, I would bet a lot of that comes from Ossoff's background in investigative journalism and the documentaries he's done. So he's like, so of course that indicates that he's probably like, he cares about the public being aware of things that are going on. He has a deep care for social justice issues, but then it's honestly not surprising to me that translates into a really good stage presence that dominates anyone else that's with him.
Yeah. So we shall see. If we look at the last election, the only reason that Ossoff and Perdue are in a runoff is that Perdue was not able to get, in Georgia, the law, I actually heard the history of the law. It was changed back in the 60s. That to win these races in Georgia, you have to have 50% of the vote plus one vote,
yep.
And neither, all four of the candidates were able to get that. So that's why they take the top two, and here we go back for the runoff. So I think it's going to be close. Georgia obviously went for Biden statewide, but you obviously had voters that were going into the ballot box that they didn't like Trump. So they voted for Biden, but when they started looking down ballot, they were picking Republicans again.
Yep.
So there is still a huge, I'll just go out and say the Republican Party is pretty much a cult, but there is there's still a desire to vote for these candidates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I just can't imagine. Like, you see Ossoff and Warnock, who clearly care about other people. They've, like, done the work on themselves. And then you see Perdue and Loeffler, who both, like, they've shown in their business practices that, like, if it makes them a buck, they don't really care about anyone else involved. Like, why would you think that, like, after acting like that in the business world, when Loeffler and Perdue get into the political sphere, that somehow their behavior would completely change?
Well, it sounds, that they both want to follow Trump. Well, interestingly, that, in the campaign event down at Valdosta last evening, Trump only let them talk for 2 minutes, but they still showed up. Kemp, the governor, who is having a big quarrel with Trump because he won't do what Trump wants him to do, Kemp did not show up to the campaign event last evening. Yep. That you literally have to, a so-called businessman like Trump, you have to go back and try to draw your parallels to him. But on the other hand, after Biden ended up winning Georgia, I don't think there are any ads out there pro Loeffler or Perdue that are drawing their parallels to Trump. And even before the election, Perdue, I don't think mentioned Trump once at all in any of his campaign ads, because he was so afraid of, that actually people seeing that and then not wanting to vote, because they look at the polling numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's really telling, because that's a reversal from what he used to be running on. He used to be running on, like before Trump, before it, came out that Georgia was going blue, Perdue was a lot more on, like, oh, he's going to cement, he's going to be more of Trump. He's just going to be in that same flavor. So that's where you get the rhetoric, like, oh, I'm a political insider and I'm a business expert just like Trump is. Like, that's where you got that rhetoric, and it's like, in retrospect, it's not surprising that's been dropped after the election's over.
So we'll see what happens. There were a few talking points kind of skipped over in your notes here. Was there anything that you want to go back and cover by chance?
Yeah, I guess it's just otherwise it's just like smaller policy positions, like no story things. It's like Perdue has come out very strongly against gay rights. He believes that, like, government contractors should be able to discriminate at people just because they're lesbian, gay, bisexual. Like obviously, he has voted multiple times to repeal the ACA. So he like not only publicly says he wants to deny coverage of pre-existing conditions, but he has actually voted to undo that. So if he's allowed to remain in office, like there's still more damage that can be done, and more ways that the existing law can be weakened even further.
Yeah. But more specifically to Georgia and the ACA, there's this insurance company called Ambetter that is doing a huge amount of advertising, because even on the public exchange, there are other carriers that do have or offer insurance over the exchange. I looked it up this week because I was curious. We have Kaiser, I think we have Blue Cross Blue Shield, so there are other carriers that do offer coverage through the ACA. But this one that you see lots of advertising. There are billboards around, there are TV commercials, there are Facebook ads and social media ads from the company Ambetter that is partnered with it's called the Peach State Health System or Health Service. And everything that I know about this entity within the state government here is that they had done a lot of good stuff for covering children. So if they were in a situation where the parent, maybe they're a single parent, they can't afford coverage for themselves and their child, they had options for that parent to go and actually cover their child. So the latest rendition of this are these Ambetter plans. And I actually had some struggles with health insurance over the past year, going through a layoff and having temporary COBRA coverage and all that going on. So it was something that was near and dear to my heart, making sure that I had something in case something would happen to me. But these Ambetter plans, they're not really accepted by a lot of doctors. I mean, you can go into the Ambetter website and put in your zip code, look for a doctor or specialist that you need, but there's not a lot that actually take the coverage. When you compare it to these larger Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana, those are really the big network holders. So it's very interesting to see the state, and the cost for the plan is not really any cheaper. I mean, I was paying COBRA for a number of months, and it was the same cost to go into one of these Ambetter plans. So you're paying, the same or more for coverage that's not as good. And I want to go back and quote some of these Republican folks and saying, well, we're going to have, better than Obamacare, and you're not going to lose your doctor. Well, that's exactly the opposite of what is actually played out. So in Texas or California, are there any other ways, with healthcare and how this plays out, or is Texas still trying to shy away from Obamacare?
I don't know. I did Obamacare for a bit in California, and I remember being incredibly easy to sign up. I've really not played around with it in Texas, so I don't know.
Gotcha. I would assume there's something similar to what Georgia, because they want to get rid of Obamacare probably because of the name mostly, because a lot of these, rural Georgia conservative Republican voters, anything that has Obama on it, they don't want anything to do with it. They're not going to touch it.
But if you call it the Affordable Care Act, then the approval rating is much higher just because you use a different name.
But just to call the difference, and I've even posted on social media, is like I'm still looking for Trump Care, because Trump Care was supposed to be better, but everything else is supposed to be cheaper, but that never turned into anything, of course. Because obviously you never had a plan. So we'll see where this all goes, and it just goes back to how important these two senator seats are going to be, because Mitch McConnell has shown his true colors countless times. He has no interest in sitting down at the table, having reasonable conversations about legislation that needs to happen. It's his way or the highway, and he is going to continue to pull those antics over this next 4 years if he is going to be the leader of the Senate from winning these 2 seats.
it's.
I almost wonder what
I don't
Johnny
want to think about
Isaacson is doing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just saying I don't want to think about what the like essentially what Democrats are going to have to do if they're unable to really make any policies for the next at least 2 years. Yeah.
I was curious to see if there was any, because I'm wondering what Johnny Isaacson's doing these days. I mean, I think he ended up having Parkinson's, so that's the biggest reason why he stepped down from that. But he's not in the news anywhere. He doesn't seem to be, talking about any of what's going on at all. But something tells me that I don't think he's completely happy with the way that Georgia politics have gone. But it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other points or topics we should cover?
Nope. That's pretty much what I've got. Just want to reiterate, of course, that if Perdue and Loeffler are if they're elected, then it's you're not going to see any COVID relief. That will not be a priority for them. It has to be Ossoff and it has to be Warnock, or else you're not going to things aren't going to get better. Yeah.
I'm awaiting my COVID results. I mean, I guess I admitted a little bit earlier that we went against the recommendation. We did travel for Thanksgiving, but we went yesterday to get a COVID test. I'm awaiting those results. Have not had any symptoms, but just wanted to double check because it's not going anywhere anytime soon. I was actually surprised yesterday when we went to the testing place. There were not more people. It was a very quick in and out. To get the test. But
it's good that you waited a bit over a week before getting tested, because of course it's easy to get. There's a high rate of false negatives if you only get tested 3 days after potential exposure, but you waited the good 7 to 8 days, so that's perfect.
Yeah. So we'll see. There is promising news from the vaccine manufacturers, from multiple manufacturers.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So we'll hopefully that continues to be good news, because we got to get this behind us.
Yeah.
All right, we'll probably button this up. Any other final points here?
Nope, that's it for me.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us for this is our third installment of now we're going to call it Goddamn Liberals, and we'll get this published out and get some talking points or retweets done. Thanks.
Yep. Bye, y'all.